They saw the worn shoes before they saw the man. They saw the janitor application before they saw the name. They saw a tired single father standing beneath a billion-dollar ceiling and decided he did not belong. They laughed softly, the kind of laugh rich buildings learn to hide behind glass. But no one in that lobby knew Ethan Walker had once built the system holding their company alive. And before the day ended, the woman on the 40th floor would hear his name and forget how to breathe. Rain slid down the front windows of Whitmore Global in silver lines, blurring the Chicago skyline until the city looked painted in cold water. Ethan Walker stepped through the revolving doors with a folder tucked beneath one arm and a small pharmacy bag curled in his left hand. His coat was clean but old, his collar pressed with care, his brown hair touched with gray at the temples. He paused just inside the lobby, not because he was afraid, but because places like this had a way of measuring a man before he spoke. Marble floors reflected chandeliers, shaped like falling stars. Elevators opened with quiet chimes. Men in tailored suits crossed the room without looking down, and women with polished badges moved as if time itself worked for them. Ethan wiped one shoe carefully on the mat, then walked toward the front desk. The receptionist looked at his folder, then at his hands. "Deliveries go around back," she said. Ethan gave a gentle nod. "I'm not here for a delivery, ma'am. I'm here for the janitor position." A nearby security guard glanced over. A young executive in a navy suit slowed just long enough to smirk. Then Derek Sloan appeared from the elevator bank, tall, expensive, and certain the world had been built to clear a path for him. He looked Ethan over once, slowly, from the damp cuffs of his pants to the pharmacy bag in his hand. "Human Resources sent you here?" Ethan answered, "Yes, sir." Derek's smile sharpened. "For maintenance?" "Janitorial staff," Ethan said. The lobby seemed to listen. Rain tapped the glass with patient fingers. Somewhere above them, an elevator bell rang, soft as a warning. Derek took the application from Ethan's folder and read the first line without interest until his eyes caught the name. He did not recognize it. To him, Ethan Walker was only another man asking to clean floors he could never afford to walk across as a guest. "Don't let him up to the 40th floor," Derek told the receptionist, loud enough for others to hear. This isn't the kind of place for someone like that. A few people laughed into their coffee cups. Ethan did not lower his eyes. He did not raise his voice. He only folded the pharmacy receipt into the bag, careful not to crease the label with Lily Walker's name printed across it. "Could you tell me where the interview room is, please?" he asked. Derek blinked, almost disappointed that the insult had found no wound to enter. "You're calm," he said. Ethan looked toward the elevators, where gold numbers climbed toward people who believed height meant worth. "I have a daughter waiting for good news," he said. Calm is cheaper than pride. For the first time, the laughter faded before it finished. The interview room sat behind a frosted glass wall near the service corridor, far from the shining lobby, where people spoke in numbers too large for ordinary families to imagine. Ethan took the metal chair offered to him and placed the pharmacy bag on his lap as if it were something fragile. Across from him, a woman from Human Resources flipped through his application with professional politeness, but Derek Sloan remained standing by the door, arms folded, waiting for a reason to dismiss him. "You have gaps in employment," the woman said. "Several," Derek added. Ethan nodded once. "My wife passed away 6 years ago. My daughter needed me at home." The woman softened, but Derek did not. "And now you suddenly want night cleaning in a corporate tower?" Ethan looked at the laminated badge on the table, the kind that opened doors and granted health coverage. "I want steady work. I want benefits. I want to earn what my child needs without begging anyone for mercy." The room settled into a careful hush. Outside the glass, a cart wheel squeaked along the hallway. A printer clicked, paused, then clicked again. Derek tapped the paper with one finger. "You wrote that you can handle technical environments. What does that mean?" Ethan did not look toward the security cameras, or the badge readers, or the closed server closet humming behind the wall. "It means I know how to be careful around things that matter." Derek gave a small laugh. "That is not an answer." "It is the only answer this job needs," Ethan said. 20 miles away, in a small apartment above a laundromat in Oak Park, Lily Walker sat at a kitchen table covered with homework, pill bottles, and a drawing of a house with yellow windows. She was 9 years old, pale from another restless night, but her smile still carried more light than the room deserved. Her neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, warmed soup on the stove while Lily pressed a toy stethoscope against her stuffed rabbit. Daddy said interviews are just conversations with chairs, Lily whispered. Mrs. Alvarez smiled. Your father says things like that because he does not want you worried. Lily looked at the clock. He always comes back with good news, even when it is not good. On the refrigerator, a hospital appointment card was held by a magnet shaped like a red apple. The date was circled twice. The estimate written beneath it was enough to make grown men stare at the floor. Ethan had sold his tools, canceled his phone upgrade, and worked weekend repairs until his hands cramped in the cold, but the numbers kept climbing like a wall. Still, every evening, he braided Lily's hair badly, burned toast occasionally, and told her the same truth with different words. A hard season is not the same as a hopeless life. Back at Whitmore Global, the human resources woman slid a temporary form across the table. We can start you on probation. Evening shift, 6 o'clock to 2 o'clock. Health benefits after 90 days. Ethan's face did not change much, but his fingers closed around the edge of the paper with quiet gratitude. Derek stepped closer. Probation means one mistake, and you are gone. Ethan picked up the pen. Then I will not make careless ones. At that exact moment, his phone vibrated inside his coat. The screen showed Lily's name. He hesitated only long enough to ask permission with his eyes. The woman nodded. Ethan answered softly, and the room heard a child's thin voice say, Daddy, did the door open? Ethan looked at the unsigned form, at Derek's cold expression, at the badge waiting beside the pen. Then he said, Yes, sweetheart. Just a little. But sometimes that is enough to step through. By late afternoon, the rain had thinned into a gray mist over Chicago, and Whitmore Global began changing faces. The morning crowd of executives moved out with leather bags and private phone calls, while the evening workers arrived through side entrances carrying lunch pails, key rings, and the quiet discipline of people who kept buildings alive after applause had gone home. Ethan received a navy work shirt, a plastic identification card, and a storage locker barely wide enough for his coat. He changed without complaint, folded his old shirt neatly, and placed Lily's medicine receipt inside his wallet like a promise. The supervisor handed him a cart with fresh towels, floor solution, and a route map marked with red lines. Stay below 30 unless called, the man said. 40 is executive level. They do not like surprises up there. Ethan nodded. I understand. You got questions? Only where the supply closet is. The supervisor pointed down the hall. You are easy. Ethan gave a faint smile. I have learned that peace is easier to carry than pride. Far above him, on the 40th floor, Claire Whitmore stood behind a wall of glass, watching clouds gather over Lake Michigan. She was 36, elegant in a white blazer, with calm blue eyes that rarely revealed the storms behind them. People called her brilliant, ruthless, impossible to impress. They did not know she slept 4 hours most nights, kept her father's old fountain pen in her desk, and still blamed herself for turning a family invention into a public empire before she understood what it cost. Her company was hours away from presenting a medical artificial intelligence platform to investors, hospital leaders, and federal reviewers from Washington, D.C. The system was supposed to identify cardiac risks faster than traditional screening, cutting days from emergency decisions and saving lives in rural clinics where specialists were rare. It was not just a product. It was the future Claire had promised the country. Then the main display flickered. A red warning appeared. One engineer stopped typing. Another whispered, That should not be possible. Claire turned slowly. Say it clearly. The senior engineer swallowed. The prediction engine is rejecting its own verification layer. Fix it. We are trying. Try faster. The room tightened around her words. Laptops opened, cables shifted, voices lowered into technical fragments. The smell of burnt coffee drifted from a side table. Outside the conference room, assistants moved with controlled panic, carrying folders nobody read and water bottles nobody touched. Derek Sloan entered with his jaw set, pretending confidence fit him better than concern. It is a visual bug, he said. Claire looked at the frozen screen. A visual bug does not lock 3 backup servers. Derek's mouth closed. On the lower floors, Ethan guided his cart through a hallway lined with framed company milestones. One plaque caught his eye only for a second. Whitmore Adaptive Care Initiative, founded on legacy architecture. He looked away before memory could open too wide. His phone buzzed again. A message from Mrs. Alvarez said Lily had eaten soup and was resting. Ethan breathed out, slow and grateful. Then the building lights pulsed once, almost gently, as if the tower had developed a heartbeat of its own. A maintenance radio crackled from his cart. Possible system disturbance on executive level. All non-essential staff remained clear. Ethan's hand paused on the mop handle. Above him, a billion-dollar room was beginning to lose faith in its smartest people, and below it stood the man who had written the first language that system ever learned to trust. The first call to the executive level came at 5:48 in the evening, not through mercy, but through embarrassment. A catering tray had tipped near the glass corridor outside the main presentation suite, leaving dark coffee across the pale stone floor just as investors from Boston, Dallas, and San Francisco were being escorted in. Derek Sloan appeared at the service elevator with impatience pressed into every line of his face. "You," he said, pointing at Ethan as if a name were too generous. Ethan steadied the cleaning cart. "Yes, sir. Bring that up. Quickly. Executive level? Do not admire it. Clean it." The doors closed between them with a soft metallic seal, and the elevator rose through the tower like a quiet question. Ethan stood beside his supplies, hands folded on the handle, while the numbers changed above him. 31, 35, 39, 40. When the doors opened, the floor looked almost unreal. The corridor glowed with warm recessed light, and beyond the glass walls, the evening sky spread over Chicago in bands of pearl and violet. Lake Michigan held the last silver of the day. The conference suite ahead shimmered with polished tables, orchids in tall vases, and screens filled with diagrams meant to impress powerful people. Ethan did not stare. He went to his knees beside the spill and began working carefully from the outside in, making sure no one would slip. Two assistants stepped around him without looking. A man in a gray suit lifted his shoe with irritation. Derek watched from near the doorway. "Faster, Walker. The floor is not going to praise you back." A few guests turned. Someone gave a quiet laugh. Ethan rinsed the towel, squeezed it into the bucket, and kept his voice low. "A clean floor does not need to praise anyone." Derek leaned closer. "You always answer like you are in a church." Ethan looked up, calm but not weak. "No, sir. I answer like my daughter might hear me." At that moment, his phone vibrated from his pocket. He ignored it once. It rang again. The name on the screen pulled his breath inward. Lily. Derek saw it and smiled without warmth. "Personal calls on your first day?" Ethan wiped his hands, stood, and stepped aside. "My child has a medical condition. I will be brief. You will be unemployed." Ethan answered anyway, turning toward the window where the city lights were beginning to wake. Lily's voice came thin and frightened through the speaker. "Daddy, my chest feels strange again." Every sound around Ethan seemed to lower. The clink of cups, the murmur of investors, the distant alarm from a frozen server display. He closed his eyes for half a second, not in panic, but in prayerful control. "Listen to me, sweetheart. Put your hand on your stomach. Breathe in for 4, hold for 2, out for 6. I am with you." Near the conference room entrance, Claire Whitmore had stepped out to take a report from her engineers. She was radiant in the severe way of a woman carrying a kingdom on tired shoulders, her hair swept back, her presence beautiful because it did not beg to be noticed. She heard Ethan's voice before she saw his uniform. "That is it," he whispered into the phone. "Slow and steady. Fear is loud, but it is not in charge." Claire stopped. Derek started toward Ethan. "Enough." Ethan lowered the phone slightly, but did not hang up. His eyes stayed gentle. "Lily, Mrs. Alvarez is calling the clinic. I will meet you soon." The child murmured, "Did you get the job?" Ethan looked at the coffee stain fading beneath his work, at Derek's anger, at Claire watching silently from 10 feet away. "Yes," he said softly, "and I am going to keep it with dignity." For reasons she could not yet explain, Claire Whitmore forgot the failing presentation for one full breath and listened to the man everyone else had chosen not to see. Before Claire could ask the question forming in her mind, the glass doors behind her opened and a wave of anxious voices spilled into the corridor. The demonstration screen inside the presentation suite had gone black, then returned with a crimson system warning across the center. Investors shifted in their chairs. Hospital executives exchanged narrow looks. A federal reviewer from Washington, District of Columbia, closed his leather portfolio halfway, the quietest possible signal that confidence was leaving the room. Derek seized the moment like a man grabbing a curtain to hide a broken window. Technical delay, he announced. 5 minutes. Claire looked at him. We said that 15 minutes ago. He turned toward the engineering team. Somebody restore the platform. A young engineer named Maya Chen stood pale beside a console, her tablet trembling slightly in her hands. The rollback failed. The safety layer keeps rejecting the live model. Then bypass it, Derek snapped. Maya shook her head. That could corrupt the patient simulation data. The room heard enough to become afraid without understanding why. Claire stepped forward, composed and striking beneath the soft ceiling lights, her white blazer sharp against the storm-colored windows. No one bypasses patient safety in my company, she said. Her voice was quiet, and because it was quiet, everyone listened. Ethan had finished cleaning the last trace of coffee from the stone floor. He lifted the bucket, placed a caution sign near the damp area, and prepared to leave the way invisible people learn to leave, without disturbing those who believe importance belongs to them. But as he passed the open doorway, the mirrored wall inside the suite caught a reflection of the main screen. He saw the error string for less than 3 seconds. His steps slowed. Not halted, not dramatic, only slowed. The way a musician might pause after hearing a familiar note played wrong. Maya whispered, "Why is the verification loop pointing backward?" Ethan spoke without turning around. "Because it is not pointing backward." Derek spun toward him. "Excuse me." Ethan kept one hand on the cart. "It is protecting itself from a false assumption." The engineers looked over. Derek gave a dry laugh. "The cleaning staff is diagnosing medical software now." Ethan lowered his gaze for a moment, then raised it to Maya, not to Derek. "Look at the timestamp on the synthetic cohort. The system thinks tomorrow's data arrived yesterday. That is why the safety layer keeps refusing it." Maya frowned, typed quickly, then stopped. "That cannot be right." Ethan nodded gently. "It should not be, but it is." Claire watched him differently now. The corridor seemed to narrow around his calm. Outside the windows, Chicago's evening lights spread along the river like golden thread sewn through blue silk. Inside, every expensive watch, polished shoe, and quiet fortune waited on a man wearing a borrowed work shirt. Derek stepped in front of Ethan. "You are done here." Ethan answered softly, "I was done 2 minutes ago, sir." "The system is not." Maya checked another field. Her lips parted. "He is correct." The room fell still enough to hear the soft hum of the screens. Claire turned fully toward Ethan Walker, and the first crack appeared in the wall between who he seemed to be and who he had been. Claire did not move at first. She only looked from Maya Chen's stunned face to the man beside the cleaning cart, as if the room had changed shape without permission. "Say that again," she told Ethan. Derek stepped forward quickly. "Claire, this is not necessary. We have certified engineers for this." Claire did not look at him. "I asked Mr. Walker." Ethan's hand rested on the cart handle, steady and unhurried. "The model is reading a future-dated test batch as if it were already verified. The safety layer is doing what it was built to do. It is refusing to trust a lie." Those last words landed with strange weight. In a company built on prediction, no one liked hearing that truth had become the obstacle. Maya checked the server log, then the validation schedule, then a backup field buried inside the compliance dashboard. Her shoulders lowered. He is right. The batch was imported from the investor demo environment with tomorrow's date stamp. The platform thinks the results already happened. One of the hospital executives leaned toward another and whispered. The federal reviewer opened his portfolio again, but this time not to leave. Claire stepped closer to the console. "Can it be corrected without touching the patient safety controls?" Maya hesitated. "Yes, but the dependencies are layered. It could take hours." Derek exhaled sharply. "Then postpone." The word struck the room like a glass placed too hard on a table. Claire's jaw tightened. Months of preparation, millions in research, rural clinics waiting for tools they could not build alone, all of it now balanced on a mistake hidden in a calendar field. Ethan looked toward the main display, where the red warning pulsed with a rhythm almost like a tired heart. He should have walked away. A wise man with a probation badge and a sick child did not invite powerful people to notice him. But wisdom without grace can turn into fear, and Ethan had promised Lily that open doors were meant to be stepped through. "May I ask one question?" he said. Derek laughed under his breath. You may not. Claire said, ask. Ethan turned to Maya. Is the original architecture still running beneath the new interface? Or did you replace the trust kernel? Maya blinked. We kept it. No one wanted to touch it. It is old, but it is stable. Ethan nodded, and for the first time, something like sadness moved through his eyes. Then you do not need ours. You need to let the system compare the date against its first clean memory. The engineer stared at him. Maya's voice dropped. How would you know it has one? Ethan did not answer immediately. The room was too beautiful for the ache rising in him. All soft lights, dark glass, silver laptops, and expensive silence. Beyond the windows, the city stretched beneath a lavender sky, glowing with dinner reservations, ambulance lights, apartment windows, and ordinary prayers. Ethan thought of Lily breathing carefully at the kitchen table, counting seconds because he had taught her that fear could be guided by rhythm. Then he said, every system that protects life needs a memory it can trust. Claire's fingers tightened around her father's fountain pen. Maya, do what he says. Derek's face hardened. This is reckless. Ethan glanced at him, not with anger, but with mercy so quiet it almost hurt. No, sir. Reckless is ignoring the truth because it came from someone you do not respect. Maya typed the command. The screen went black. Every breath in the room seemed to stop. Then one by one, the warning lights disappeared, and the platform returned with a soft blue glow. The blue glow returned first on the largest screen, then across the smaller monitors around the presentation suite, spreading through the room like dawn finding windows after a long night. Numbers began moving again. Graphs rebuilt themselves. The cardiac risk simulation reloaded with clean validation markers, each one turning green in a steady line that felt less like technology and more like mercy arriving on schedule. No one clapped. Not yet. The investors stared at the restored platform as if they had just watched a locked door open without a key. Maya Chun covered her mouth with both hands, then looked back at Ethan with the humbled wonder of someone who had studied a cathedral for years and suddenly met the mason who laid the first stone. Derek Sloan stood rigid near the conference table, his expensive confidence draining into something smaller and colder. Claire Whitmore moved closer to the console, her face luminous beneath the soft white lights, beautiful not because of wealth or power, but because truth had reached her and forced her to become still. Run the demonstration, she said quietly. Maya nodded and initiated the full sequence. The screen displayed a rural clinic case from northern Montana, then a county hospital file from western Kansas, then a simulated emergency room intake from Ohio. Each test passed. Each result appeared faster than expected. The federal reviewer leaned forward. One hospital executive whispered, "That would save hours." Another answered, "In some places, hours are everything." Ethan lowered his eyes and reached for his cart. He had done what was needed. That was all. He did not wait for thanks, because thankfulness from powerful people often came with questions, and questions had a way of digging up graves a man had worked hard to leave covered. But before he could turn away, Maya called out, "Wait. There is something in the root log." Claire looked over. What kind of something? Maya scrolled through the system history, past modern updates, licensing notes, security revisions, and archived architecture tags older than most of the engineers in the room expected. The display shifted to a narrow line of pale text near the bottom of the screen. Original Trust Kernel, Maya read slowly. Authored under Legacy Identifier, she stopped. The air changed. Even the ventilation seemed to quiet above them. Ethan closed his fingers around the handle of the cart, not tightly, but with the careful restraint of a man holding back an ocean with one hand. Claire stepped toward the monitor. "Read it." Maya swallowed. E.J. Walker Protocol. For a moment, nobody understood what had happened except Claire, and perhaps Ethan, though he had already lowered his gaze. Claire did not speak. Her eyes moved from the letters on the screen to the man in the Navy work shirt, then back again, as if the two truths refused to sit in the same world. The E.J. Walker Protocol was not a minor component. It was the original safety architecture her father had acquired years earlier, the foundation that allowed Whitmore Global to become trusted by hospitals across the country. It was the reason the company had survived its earliest failure. It was the invisible spine beneath every shining promise in that room. Derek forced a laugh that sounded thin and misplaced. That could be anyone. Ethan said nothing. Maya checked the archived author file. A photograph thumbnail appeared, grainy, dated 10 years earlier, showing a younger Ethan in a dark suit beside a research board, holding a little girl wrapped in a pink blanket. Claire placed one hand on the edge of the table. "That is impossible," she whispered. Ethan finally looked at her, and there was no pride in his face, only grief, grace, and the tired dignity of a father who had not come to reclaim a throne. "It was a long time ago," he said. The entire 40th floor fell silent, not because the system had been saved, but because the man they had nearly dismissed had been carrying the name that built it. Claire Whitmore did not ask Ethan to explain himself in front of the investors. Something in his face told her that a public revelation could become another form of humiliation if handled without grace. She turned to the room with the practiced steadiness of a leader who understood that silence sometimes deserved protection. "Continue the demonstration," she said. "Maya, document every corrective step. Derek, clear the hallway." Derek looked at her as if she had spoken in a language beneath him. "Claire, with respect, we do not know what he has touched or why he is here." Claire's eyes stayed calm. "We know he saved the platform without compromising patient safety. That is more than anyone else in this room accomplished in the last hour." The sentence did not rise, but it landed with authority. Derek stepped back. Ethan reached for the card again, hoping the moment would end before memory found too much oxygen. But Claire came closer, not with the posture of a billionaire chief executive, but with the careful humility of someone approaching a closed chapel door. "Mr. Walker," she said softly, "my father kept your name in his desk." Ethan looked at her then. The polished room, the frozen faces, the immaculate skyline beyond the glass. All of it seemed to grow distant. "Your father was a good man," he replied. Claire swallowed. "He said the person who wrote the original trust kernel refused a board seat, refused stock options, and asked only that the technology remain affordable for small hospitals." Ethan gave the smallest nod. "Rural clinics saved my wife twice before the third time they could not." The room listened differently now, not with curiosity, but with reverence. Claire's beautiful face softened, and for the first time that day, the woman famous for control looked almost young beneath the weight of regret. "Why did you disappear?" she asked. Ethan glanced toward the phone in his pocket, where Lily's last message still waited unanswered. "Because my wife died, my daughter was an infant, and grief made every achievement sound like noise. I sold what I had, paid what I owed, and chose a smaller life where I could make breakfast, pack lunches, and be there when Lily woke up afraid." No one moved. Even the investors who had entered the building measuring profit now sat beneath a truth that could not be priced. Maya lowered her tablet. A hospital executive wiped his glasses though they were already clean. Claire looked back at the screen, at the protocol carrying his initials, then at the borrowed shirt he wore. "You came here for a janitorial job." Ethan answered with the same quiet dignity that had carried him through every insult. "I came for health insurance. My daughter has surgery coming. I did not come to be remembered." Derek tried one final time to rescue his pride. "That story has not been verified." Claire turned to him. "My father's archive verifies it. The code verifies it. His restraint verifies it." Her voice became lower. "And your behavior has verified something too." Derek's face lost color. Ethan did not look pleased. He looked tired, and that made the truth sharper. Claire opened the old fountain pen in her hand and placed it on the table before him. "This belonged to the man who believed in you before this company learned your name." Ethan stared at it, and the years seemed to gather behind his eyes. He did not reach for it at first. Then his phone rang again, gentle and ordinary in a room full of power. Lily's name appeared on the screen, and Claire saw immediately what everyone else had missed. The greatest system Ethan Walker had ever protected was not in her building at all. Ethan answered before pride could interfere with love. "I am here, sweetheart." Lily's breathing came softly through the phone, uneven but brave, the way children become brave when they are trying not to frighten the adults who adore them. Mrs. Alvarez had already taken her to the clinic, and the nurse wanted Ethan to come in as soon as possible. He closed his eyes, and for one aching second the bright executive floor, the recovered system, the watchful investors, and the woman holding her father's fountain pen all disappeared. There was only a little girl in Oak Park asking whether her daddy was coming. "I am leaving now," he said. Derek shifted, as if rules still mattered more than mercy. You are in the middle of a company emergency. Claire turned toward him with a stillness so complete that even his arrogance seemed to lose balance. The emergency is over because of him. Then she looked at Ethan. Go to your daughter. Ethan shook his head once. I just started this job. Claire's voice softened. No, you just reminded this company what a job is supposed to protect. The room did not clap, and somehow that was better. It listened. Ethan placed the cleaning towel neatly on the cart, as if dignity required even small endings to be orderly. Claire walked beside him to the private elevator, not ahead of him, not behind him, but beside him, and the people who had stepped around him an hour earlier made space without being asked. In the mirrored doors, Ethan saw himself in the borrowed uniform, and Claire saw the man her father had trusted, the widower who had traded recognition for bedtime stories, medical bills, school lunches, and a child's fragile mornings. Mr. Walker, she said as the elevator opened, tomorrow, we will discuss a role worthy of your work. Ethan looked at her with tired grace. Tomorrow, please discuss better health coverage for everyone who keeps this building running. Claire's beautiful eyes lowered, not in shame alone, but in awakening. Done, she whispered. By 9 that night, Ethan sat beside Lily's clinic bed while rain tapped gently against the window. She held his thumb in her small hand and asked if the people at work were nice. Ethan smiled faintly. Some are learning. The next morning, Whitmore Global gathered in the atrium under a ceiling washed with pale gold sunlight. Claire stood before engineers, assistants, guards, cleaners, executives, and board members, no stage between them, no velvet rope of importance. Derek stood near the front, his face drawn and quiet. Claire spoke clearly. This company was built on a foundation we failed to honor. Ethan Walker gave us technology that protected patients, and yesterday, while wearing a janitorial uniform, he protected us again. A hush moved through the atrium. Derek stepped forward, voice low. Mr. Walker, I was wrong. I treated you as less than a man. I am sorry. Ethan did not humiliate him. He only nodded. Then treat the next person better before you know their history. Months later, Lily's surgery succeeded. The employee health plan changed across every department, and Ethan returned not as a symbol of revenge, but as a guardian of something deeper than profit. And when Claire passed the evening cleaning crew in the hallway, she learned every name, because one quiet father had shown her that respect should never wait for a famous signature to become deserved.